Mr. Wright, the Sabine Pass liquefaction project in Cameron Parish took 441 days. And it may, I don't know if this is going to be Mr. Wright or Mr. Smith. And I think, Mr. Smith, you mentioned that it was only 2 months between the closing of the application process to approval, so 60 days. So clearly there's 381 days in which the process took the time to get done. So what bottlenecks are coming up that are prolonging this process?
So thank you for the question. So we certainly understand the sense of urgency around these regulatory processes, and we're endeavoring to move these forward as expeditiously as possible in all cases. So in the timeline that you just mentioned, after the Sabine Pass order was finished, we stated in the Sabine Pass order that we did have to consider the cumulative impact of that order and any subsequent orders when we're looking at additional authorizations. This is a very important and complex public interest determination that has to look at domestic and global impacts, domestic markets, global markets, impacts on consumers, American businesses and families, jobs, et cetera. It's not a trivial point, and we did have...
So was there a bottleneck per se, or was it just that the complexity of the issue was such that it just takes that long?
I think it was a tremendously complex and important issue. And
now, since a lot of those issues are generic, presumably subsequent approvals will not take as long?
I would agree. One of the reasons that we pointed out that the period between the end of the comment period and the actual issuing of the order was something, just north of 2 months, was to state that the cumulative impact study, which was a complex study, is not something that we see that we're going to have to replicate between each one of these orders.
Now, just because I know this is how the game works, there may be an agency that sits on it and doesn't process it. Is there any way to, one, identify agencies which perhaps were not as expeditious as they could be, and two, if there was such an agency, it doesn't have to be named, is there any way to put the Bunsen burner underneath them to get them to actually get it moving?
Our job is very specific. And very explicit. It's to work together to move as expeditiously as possible to get good public interest determination.
That's not really answering my question.
Well, I mean, Congressman, I think it does address the issue. I mean, we are currently...
So there's never an agency that seems to be a little dilatory in terms of how quickly they respond?
Well, in this case, we've got two primary agencies that have jurisdiction. We control the authorization to export the molecule. FERC controls the authorization to build the terminal, and we are working together very closely to make sure that we're getting this work done.
Okay. Mr. Wright, would you add anything to what has been said?
What I would say, and I said earlier this morning, a lot of our problems or difficulties in processing do stem from the applicant. We encourage, or by statute, they're supposed to stay in the pre-filing period for at least 6 months. Some companies are very eager to get out of the pre-filing, thinking that going to the application mode would hasten the processing. It does not. Pre-filing is a very free-flowing information flow period. You go to a formal application, our ex parte rules take over. Things have to be done much more in writing and on the record. That said, I believe Cheniere would have been processed much sooner. They did not complete their air modeling analysis during the pre-filing. So substantial, they jumped right to the formal application. Therefore, substantial information was required after their certificate filing was made.
Gotcha. Is there any limitation or time frame in which individuals or organizations can file claims in court to request a rehearing of the commission orders?
30 days after the commission issues its order, rehearings are due.
So there is a definite kind of defined time frame, cannot exceed?
Yes, sir.
Great. Mr. Smith, any comments? You looked like you were looking off in space pensively.
I had no additional comments.
Gotcha. Okay. I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cassidy.